Everything you want is on the other side of fear. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Athlete Podcast sponsored by Sports for Champions. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Sophie Haywood. How are you today, Sophie?
I'm really well, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So if you could take you right back to the very beginning, as we always do with these podcasts, I believe, as many people as do, your football journey started in the garden.
It did, yeah. So probably about 4, as early as I can remember, I was playing football in the garden with my dad. I had my twin sister in goal, but she wasn't a massive fan. So probably about 4 years begging my dad to join the team, and it was a bit... I was in dancing at the time with my sister, and my mum was quite like me to stay into that, so it took a few years to persuade them. But yeah, I think about 8, I persuaded them. There was only boys' team, so I started in a boys' team, as most female footballers do my age. And then my dad, bless him, created a team for me to play in.
That's so good. Is he a big football fan, your dad?
Massive, yeah. I think if it weren't for my dad, I don't think I'd be in football. It was just because I wanted to be like my dad, and I went to his games and watched him play and stuff like that. So massive Liverpool fan. So it started by watching games and stuff like that with him, and then finally when I convinced him, he was like, "Oh, I'll have to do my badges." So he did his coaching badges, and then he created the team for me. So yeah, definitely massively influenced by my dad.
So obviously playing with boys in the beginning, was that training or playing? Was it all both? What were you allowed to do? So
at first it was just training. I remember my first session, it was like just a load of boys, and I think I went down and I was like, "Where's the girls team?" And they pointed to like the corner of the pitch, and there was 2 girls passing a ball about, and I was like, right, okay. So we went into a game, and my dad, I can't remember, my dad remembers every single goal I've ever scored, I think, and he said I scored 4 goals that day, so he could be lying, but I'm going to take it. And then he was like, okay, no, she needs a team. So then obviously he started the girls team. I don't know if I should admit this, but I played above my age. We put posters out, but we only seemed to get girls between the age of 8 and 10 and 12, sorry, which is like the under 12s age. I was 8, so we pretended I was 10, and
Wow.
I played in the under 12s league. FA found out, so I actually played for under 12s for 4 years. So, but yeah, thanks to my dad, he's done a lot of stuff like that where he's had to sacrifice things for my career, and if it weren't for that at the start, then obviously I won't be here talking to you. So
there you go.
So yeah.
Wow. And in terms of your playing style back then, were you very similar to how you are now? I mean, everyone starts as an attacker, surely.
Yeah, and then gets moved back. I'm clinging on to a forward still. I've not been moved back yet. I've dabbled in midfield, so we'll see how long I can last up there. But fairly similar. I think as you get older, I've had injuries and stuff, you maybe lose a little bit of pace here and there. But as a kid, I was very direct. I loved Thierry Henry. So I loved like practicing. He was on them Nike adverts where he'd like do the tricks and he'd like stand on the ball, and I'd practice it. I did that in a game once. My dad took me off because he said it was showboating. He said it was disrespectful. But yeah, so stuff like that I really loved. I loved like being direct, scoring goals. Obviously the older you get, the opposition gets a bit tougher to do those types of things. So but yeah, that's still, I'd like to think I'm still quite direct and like to chuck a trick in if I can, but like I say, the defenders are a lot better than under 12s.
There you go. How did you find the attitude towards girls football when you were first starting out?
Well, it's changed massively. I think I remember training with the boys, and not to paint them in a bad light, they didn't enjoy playing with me. They didn't want the girl on the team until I started scoring goals, and then they did want the girl on the team. But I remember, like, I've got a scar on my hand actually. I remember one time they tripped me up and someone stood on my hand, and like people just didn't, I don't know, it's just people are not scared of, but people don't like things that aren't the norm, I guess, and it just wasn't really the norm when I started playing.
Probably scared to get beaten by you or taken.
Well, yeah, the thing was, all the way through school, like if you took a boy on and beat him, it was like you got beat by a girl, which to be honest I quite liked hearing, because he did get beat by a girl. But yeah, so I guess it's changed a lot, which is great. But then it also makes you the player you are, because it toughens you up a little bit. And I owe a lot to playing not only with boys but playing with people older than me. You know, you've got to be, if you're not as physical, you've got to find other ways to beat them and be better than them. So I owe a lot to playing with boys and playing with people older than me.
I think you moved from there to the Hull Centre of Excellence, is that right?
Yeah, I did. So I was there from about 8 till, unfortunately, it got closed when I was about 14. But that's where, like, I started, obviously academy football, it's less free. Like, grassroots, you can pretty much do what you want, pick the ball up and try and dribble through the team if you want. But, you know, the Centre of Excellence is where I, like, started to learn the tactical and technical side of things, which, yeah, I loved it. Sometimes I wish I could go back to playing, obviously, in the academy. Yeah, really, really fun time. Really sad when it shut, but again, found a new academy, and that's where my dad came in again for travel and stuff. Moved on to Lincoln Centre of Excellence, and yeah, so played in academies up until about 16, 17.
So at Lincoln, was that the academy of a WSL team at the time?
So they had a WSL team, so it was Lincoln ladies that were in the WSL. When I moved, I was about 14, so I played at they had an academy, and I had a few other options. I was looking at Leeds and York, but at the time Casey Stoney was the England I think she was captain at the time, played for Lincoln ladies, and she was managing the under-17s. So I was like, wow, what an opportunity there. Obviously she went on to manage Man United. Now she's over in America managing, so I was like, what an opportunity that is. So I think it was one of her first coaching, jobs, and I learned a lot there. So yeah, played under her till about 16, and then sort of made the jump to the first team as Lincoln ladies changed to Notts County.
Would that have been your first pro contract at that point?
Yes, I think I don't know if I was 16, just before my 17th birthday, around that time. And I didn't actually play the full season because I went out to America to play and get my degree. But yeah, I learnt a lot. I was maybe only in the team 8 months, and obviously as a 16, 17 year old, as a forward, Ellen White's up front, you're not really getting many minutes. But I got a few, and it was more just the professional environment of just being on that team and learning what it takes to be a professional and training with those types of players day in, day out. I mean, it was mainly just on the night because obviously I had college and school and that in the day, but I learned a lot. And again, credit to my dad for taking me all the way to Nottingham. I got a shout out my dad.
I know, it's always the parents, isn't it, who actually prop up.
It really is. There's been I'd say a good sort of 3 or 4 times in my career where we could have just called it, and if it weren't for my parents sacrificing, then again I wouldn't still be playing. So
there you go. You mentioned your degree there. I know education is something very important here. Can you tell us a little bit about how that sort of played off against your football career? Yeah,
it's always been that trade-off. I think at times I've maybe sacrificed progressing in my career, maybe football-wise, for an education. Luckily it's getting less that way now. Mm-hmm. It's adapting where you can. Clubs are better with sort of mixing in education and things like that, but at the time, like I said, I was playing for Notts County. There was a couple of the girls doing their degrees there, and they've been doing them for sort of 5 years, going on fair and still nowhere near. Obviously having to do it part-time, and yeah, I was playing for England colleges, I think, under 19s, and a coach saw me. He was English, but he was from a team in America, and he was like, I'd love to give you a full scholarship. And I always knew my mum and dad, made it clear that, you can't play football forever. And I knew that education would be important, and it was something that I always wanted to do. I was fairly academic, and it was just something I wanted to sort of prove to myself as well. And also I love the film Bend It Like Beckham. I don't know if you've seen it, where at the end she goes off to play in America. Yeah. So I'd always fancied myself to be a bit like Bend It Like Beckham. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. And like I said, maybe career-wise, football-wise, it maybe slowed my progression a little bit, but to get that degree, then it led on to my masters, and ultimately helped me get to where I am with football, because where I did my masters dictated where I signed and things like that. So yeah, I wouldn't change it. And also it just makes you an all-round person, like I say, moving away at 18,
of course, yeah,
learning to do your washing and all that, it teaches you a lot.
And you were in sort of the south part of America? Yes,
I was in Alabama, right sort of near Florida, for 2 years, and then I was in Dallas, Texas for 2 years, So yeah, culturally very different. Weather's very different. I had to learn how to play in very humid weather, which turns out I'm not very good at. But yeah, like I say, just like the life you get there, things you learn, the people you meet. Like I still keep in contact with a lot of people, from my college days. So yeah, culturally a big change, but one that I think has shaped me as a person.
Soccer, as they call it over there, is huge for the American, especially the women's team. Obviously better paid than the men's team, probably bigger stars in a lot of ways within America itself. How was the attitude towards you being a footballer in America?
I think it's a different mindset. I think here we view football, or we used to at least, and it's changing, or has changed maybe, which is for the better. It was a man's game here, a game for boys. Over there it's viewed primarily as a sport for women, not for women but for everyone, but I think it's bigger for the women than it is for the men. So obviously that's a completely different mindset. I think those are the two big differences. I think the other difference is sort of the outlook on how they play the game. I know we had a bit of a chat earlier, but I think the big one is, Europe and England is very tactical and technical, whereas over there, not saying that they don't have that, maybe not quite as much, but they put a lot of emphasis on like the speed, power, strength, the physical attributes. They're all unbelievable athletes and they could probably play any sport. And I think that was something that, again, I knew I had the technical, tactical stuff having grown up in England. So to add that to my game again, I think made me a little bit more all-rounded, but it's certainly a different way of looking at it. I'd never really, for me it was always get your technique and stuff sorted first, whereas in America it was like you're up at 6, you've got weights, you're running, you're doing this, that and the other, which is a bit of a shock to the system at 18. But I
can imagine.
Yeah.
Is it much similar to how sort of the NFL, they'll hoover up all of the best athletes and from the men's pool, and then whereas for women, obviously soccer, I think it's the top participated sport for women in America, so it'd be they just take all the top athletes, and whether you're a footballer or not, we can kind of mould you. Is it that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think they've got, I think here we're a bit more relaxed in how, we're, kids pretty much, if they want to do sport, they'll do sport. And, I think certainly how I was raised, it was whatever you want to do. If my dad's always said to me, if you're 100% in, we're 100% in. So it was very much led out, whatever we wanted to try, we did. Whereas in America, it's very much, the parents are very keen to get their kids in sport as soon as possible. And obviously, football, soccer, over there, it's just quite an easy one. It's accessible, it's easy to get your kid involved. You need a football and that's it. So a large amount of people start it, and obviously the more people start, the bigger the crop for elite athletes, which is obviously why America is so successful, because they've got such a pool. If you're a girl and you like sport in America, you've probably played football. So.
There you go. So you're over there 4 years, is that right?
Yeah.
And then you came back to do your masters. And was it a case of you were picking somewhere to do your masters based on its proximity to a football club? Or?
Yeah, it was sort of one of the two. It was sort of like you come home and you have that shock of like, I'm no longer in structured education. Or obviously I went back into education, but it's like, what next? And I knew I wanted to try and play professionally here, and so it was like, well, I need one, a club, and two, a way of, if I can't get a full-time professional contract, a way of living and something to do. And I'd sort of entertained the idea of getting a master's. I quite like the idea of also doing a degree back home, because the educational system's really different as well in America, so I quite like the idea of doing a degree back home as well. So I started looking into a master's, and an old coach that I'd worked with at Notts County was actually coaching at the University in Nottingham at the time, and she was like, we'd love to have you if you play for the team, we can get you a scholarship. I thought, okay, that might be a good way to sustain myself. And then she also was like, if you hadn't heard, Aston Villa are doing trials, and luckily I got in, and it was close enough that I could learn to drive quickly, and then sort of just commute between the two. So for the next year and a bit, it was sort of full-time masters, part-time football player, and then also obviously trying to work as well. It was a very busy year.
I can imagine. Wow.
But yeah,
that's really difficult, I imagine, to fit all of that in. You're really sectioning your nights into hourly slots.
Yeah, I think I remember at the peak of it, there was one night I had free, which was a Friday night, and like for homework, I guess. So yeah, it was a tough, and like I also had to play for the uni, so obviously it's part of my scholarship. Played football for the uni and futsal for the uni.
Wow.
And also played football at Villa. So I don't think I had a day in the week where I wasn't doing something football related, but I loved it. I love football, and I couldn't do it now, not with this knee, but back then I just loved being on the pitch or even on the court as much as possible.
And your masters, that was sport related as well?
Yes, sport and exercise medicine. So my undergrad, obviously sports science, and then it's one of them where you think, what do you want to do, and you follow sort of what you're interested in. I've always been interested in sport. I'm a bit of a nerd in terms of I really like science and things like that, so it just sort of seemed the two went together well. In terms of what I want to do with that, I've not completely nailed that down yet, but I just think I'd love to work with athletes in some way, probably in the performance side of it. Obviously that's where my degrees are, but it's just good to know that I've got them for when I need them.
So important for when you finish your career. Did you use a lot of your sort of learnings through your masters to actually inform how you're looking after yourself in your own career?
Yeah, a little bit. Obviously in that masters you cover like nutrition, you cover rehab, you cover anatomy, like all sorts of things. Like a little bit in terms of like S&C type stuff as well, so you can make sort of more informed decisions. Obviously at a club like Villa we had, you know, all these people that you can go and actively seek that information out anyway, but I just think having that base knowledge to be able to make your own decisions has helped. And there's been a few times where I've like, even with injuries, I've gone, oh, I think I've done this, and then I have done it, and it's just nice to, like, especially with my knee, as soon as I did it I was like, okay, I know what I've done. The physio came over, she said, what have you done? I said, I've torn my ACL. She was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And I could just sort of tell, and I don't know whether that was from my background, but it was more, I knew what to expect. You know, I've covered ACL rehab programs in my degree, so it's like, okay, I instantly know what to expect, this is what I'm facing. Just things like that, yeah, informing better choices in terms of sleep, nutrition, habits like that. Little things that, you know, you call the 1% that make you better, the little things that add up to an extra 1% in performance. It's nice to have that knowledge, I guess.
Yeah, that base level of understanding, probably a bit more than that.
Yeah.
So when you joined Villa, they were in the Championship, is that right?
Yeah, they were, yeah. So I trialled at a few places, ultimately went for Villa just because I had a feel of it. I guess at the time, I think the season before they'd finished bottom of the Championship, I might be wrong, or somewhere bottom two, you know, somewhere along the bottom. But I think it was bottom, and I just don't think they had anyone getting relegated that year. So I had a few clubs like, are you really turning your nose down to sign for Villa? But it was just a feel I had. I got on, they'd just signed a new manager, Gemma Davis at the time, and I got on really well with her, got on really well with the staff, the girls, and I just had this sort of feeling that the club had an ambition, that there was a path they were leading towards, that they really wanted to invest in the women's side, and ultimately look where they are now.
Yeah,
they're one of the top, certainly in the top half of the WSL now. So it was just a feeling I got, and signed for them. My first season, I think we finished 6th, which is a good jump, you know, you got mid-table, and then my second season we went unbeaten and got promotion, which was a great year but a strange year. It was like the year COVID and everything hit, so it was a bit of an odd, we like celebrated over Zoom, we didn't get like the lift the trophy on the pitch moment, which is sad. So hopefully I'd like to win that league again, hopefully with Sheffield United, and get that feeling. But 2 years there, and then obviously we pushed up to the WSL.
Just taking you back a little bit, we spoke earlier about you coming back a slightly different player, or perhaps with slightly different attributes coming back from America.
Yeah.
And you said then that about it being more physical there. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then perhaps a bit about your own game and about what kind of attacker you are? Yeah,
I think, like I said, as a young girl, I was quite fast and tricky, but I think as you get older, those things sort of, the gap closes, certainly as other girls mature as well, they get faster and stronger, and it's harder to rely on those maybe things that you were slightly ahead, you know, at a younger age. The playing field becomes a bit more equal, so then, you know, the older I got, I started relying more on sort of my technical side and my knowledge of the game. My dad, I've always watched football with my dad, so I think just from watching football and him explaining things and he did this to do this and this creates space, and I had a good knowledge of, and like things like my movement, I started relying more on that, and maybe moving slightly away from the physical, fast, tricky, and more towards the technical and tactical side. I'd say maybe just before I went to America, certainly because I was 16, 17 playing with women, so I'm not going to be faster than a lot of them, I'm not going to be stronger than a lot of them, I can't just dribble through them. So I think that I did start to rely on that a lot more. Then going over to America, they're massive on the S&C, power, strength, speed, fitness.
S&C, strength and conditioning.
Strength and conditioning, yeah, that side of it. So I'd never lifted a weight until I went there. So all of a sudden you open up this new element of power and strength, and I think I came back physically the best I've ever been, probably, in terms of speed and power and all that, and then I think that's when the two when I came back to England married together. I think those two, certainly the first 2 seasons back while I was in the Championship, I really noticed a difference in my game. In America it's very direct, use your pace, get the ball in front of you and beat the defender, and I started taking that into Villa, and I'd always been a number 9, drifted towards a hold the ball up, or a number 10, use your knowledge of the game. And all of a sudden at Villa they put me on the wing because I started using my pace a bit more and started using that side of the America stuff that it brought out in me. So I think it was nice because then I could find a mix of the two. Like I say, again, as you evolve you change. I've changed again, like with injuries and stuff, my game's changed again. You're always evolving as a player, but it was nice to just have a different outlook or a different aspect of the game focused on out there than what I'd been used to.
Yeah, there you go, the more the tools the better.
Yeah.
You touched on injuries there a couple of times, so was it in your first year in the WSL with Villa that you tore your ACL? Yeah,
I'd say maybe it was towards the end I think it was about February, so a couple of months towards the end of the season. It was a tough one. It come at a pretty rubbish time for me, obviously getting back in the WSL. Mentally for me it was like I always wanted to get back there, making the decision to leave. You've got a point to prove in, can I get back there? And I always wanted to get back there, and obviously earning the right to get there and winning the league it was a big year for me. And I just started playing quite consistently in the WSL, and we'd just got a manager in that put his faith in me and said he wanted me to play and things like that. And then unfortunately we had that discussion, and then I went out onto the training pitch and pop, and then there you go. It all disappeared quite quick, but like I say, part of it you get, and especially in the women's game, so many ACL injuries, we're just unfortunately built to be a bit more prone to it. There's your S&C side coming into it, but without boring you. But that again, you wouldn't really change it as much as I'd rather have not had to go through it. It teaches you a lot, and again it shifts your game and it forces you to look at other aspects of your game that maybe now you can't rely on other things, you have to change and adapt, and little things like taking gym more seriously and injury prevention more seriously. Like you don't really get that until you have to go through a big injury like that.
Do you think your sport's made you a more resilient person?
Yeah, 100%. I just think when I think about tough things that I've been through, obviously apart from personal loss and grief and things like that, all the major obstacles, as most people, is from your career. And I think it's taught me a lot. Like I say, injury, as much as I'd rather not have a few bits of metal in my knee, it's taught me to be who I am, even off the pitch as well. So you do find yourself going through tough times and you go, well, I went through that, so I can do this. So it taught me a lot on and off the pitch. Like I say, I'm a different player around the training ground. Like I'm a bit more, I wouldn't say professional, I think I've always tried to be quite professional, but I understand the importance of little bits of like nutrition and the gym stuff and that. And then off the pitch it's just sort of that mentality of like, we just keep going type thing.
definitely. So you're at Sheffield United now.
Yeah.
We've got a few on the roster at Sports for Champions.
Yeah.
Some of our favourite faces. How are you enjoying your time there?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, it's been it's only my second season now. Yeah, first season again. It wasn't the season I'd like. I needed a second operation on my knee, unfortunately. So I sort of played half the season with a torn meniscus from the previous injury. And then at Christmas had the second op. So the first season was sort of a bit, not, I wouldn't say a write-off, but it was just sort of getting back to getting. It was tough. You need to get form. You sort of need a good run of games, and I was sort of in and out of injury. But it was just nice to get back to playing, and sometimes a change of scenery is nice. Mix it up a bit, and certainly what it has offered is me to be closer to home. Like, I've done the travelling, I've been here, there and everywhere, and as much as you probably won't think it because I've lived, a few different places now, I'm very like home orientated, and it's nice to be able to live at home, go to training, and then at the end of the day come back home and sort of switch off from football, because when you live away you don't really switch off. You're often living with teammates and things like that, so that's quite nice. It's a different aspect to my career now, obviously later on in my career. This season again, it's been another tough one, but I feel like you don't get any easy seasons in football. That's sport. You're always looking for the next thing and how to, the next better yourself and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully kick on this season, and like I say, I really want to win this league again. So hopefully that's with Sheffield United.
Yeah, I think you definitely deserve it with the fans there. For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And the club in general, because it's been through a lot, hasn't it? So
yeah, and it's a club that the year I got promoted with Villa, they were the team that pushed us. They were second, and they were there every step of the way. And to be honest, Sheffield United at the time probably felt a bit hard done by, because we got awarded the win. There was a few games left, I can't remember how many, and they were like, right, we'll call it and you can go up. Sheffield United probably weren't happy with that. I mean, at the time I think we were worthy. It was a few points ahead and we were unbeaten, and we'd played Sheffield United twice, but I can understand why they were obviously a bit upset about that, and I think they've always been there or thereabouts, and they've never quite been able to reach sort of the WSL. So I think I'd quite like to do that for a lot of people that have put effort into the club to help it get to where hopefully it deserves to be.
Yeah, hopefully they can use that. Can you tell us a little bit about what a typical day's training would look like if you didn't have your foot in a boot? If I didn't have my foot in a boot right now, as we talk about injuries. So again, it's slightly different for each club. It's slightly different at Villa than it is here, but typically get in about 9, maybe half 9, have some breakfast, depends what, again, each club's different. And then typically a day would start with a team meeting. Often, it depends how close it is to your next game. Sometimes it's just a meeting. If it's sort of early Monday, Tuesday, it'll be reviewing a previous game. Sometimes if it's sort of end of the week, Friday, looking at the game ahead, looking at the opponent, how we're going to play, things like that. Sometimes it's just reviewing what you're going to do for the day, what the session looks like. Obviously if you go through the session, then you're quicker out on the pitch if everyone knows what we're doing. And then typically you'll go into some sort of prehab or something like that, which is basically just doing what you need to do to get your body warm and ready to, obviously the older you get and the more injuries you pick up, the longer you're doing prehab. But little niggles like that, a bit of stretching, bit of activation, a little bit of weights ready to go out on the pitch. And then each club's different, between an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours on the pitch. Each day, again, depending on how close you are to a game, will be different. Obviously, as you head towards a game, the amount of distance you hit, you'll have a marker each day. Today we're in 6k, tomorrow we're in 8k, whatever. Get that done, and then typically have some sort of lunch. Again, depends what we've got cooked up for us. There's a lovely woman called Liz who cooks for us at the minute. Shout out to Liz. Nice. She's been doing some really nice pesto pasta, nut free for me because I'm allergic. And then gym, depends. We don't have gym every day. If it's too close to a game, we probably won't, or if it's just after a game, we probably won't. Afternoons usually filled with some sort of gym, and then any individual stuff. If you want to stay out and do some individual stuff on the pitch,
or maybe set up a meeting with a coach to go over some individual clips or analysis, or I don't know, talk about a game or something. And then as an injured player, you're normally in longer, so you'd probably be in longer than that, but typically you'd be done mid-afternoon. Not bad.
That's not too bad.
No, not too bad at all.
And then in terms of your approach to nutrition, do you have a nutritionist who kind of plans out your meals, or?
So it's not, at both my clubs, it's not been as strict as that. Obviously you've got access to the knowledge and nutritionists and, you know, things like that. It's more you get an idea and you get given sort of the knowledge of what you should roughly be doing. Obviously if you want, I've known players before wanted a strict diet plan where they've gone, no, can you plan me Monday, Tuesday, whatever, exactly what I'm eating, which is obviously available to you. I'm more someone who, like, I know what works for me by now. Some of the younger girls don't, and they're like more structure, but I think I know what works for me by now. But there's people there to speak to if obviously you've got questions, but also a lot of the time if you're getting your food prepared for you, like certainly at Villa, more so, we was in for breakfast and dinner, and then for my tea I used to just take the leftovers home. So there aren't really leftovers at Sheffield United, we see it off quite quick, but for Villa it's like, well, they're pretty much preparing all my meals for me, so you can't really go too far wrong unless you're buying biscuits to go with your tea and stuff like that.
One less thing to worry about, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into it, so much preparation outside of the training time. You have to always be constantly thinking about it and looking after yourself. Something that I know is changing, and it's changing at a rapid rate, but there's still some way to go, is the funding aspect. Obviously the Sports for Champions exists to support athletes whose funding doesn't quite fulfil what their requirements to actually make the most of themselves in their sport. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about how funding works and perhaps how Sports for Champions can help? Yeah,
well, first of all, I've obviously new to this and I'm yet to do my first job here, but I'm really excited. Like I say, I've always wanted to work with people, not necessarily athletes, but work with people, and I've always loved sort of teaching, coaching with schools, so really excited with that. But it's nice. I think it offers for an athlete's point of view, especially sort of this season. I'm a full-time footballer, but certainly I know a few teammates last season worked with you. It offers athletes options in terms of, you know, we were part-time, so it's nice to not only help them with sort of funding themselves through whatever stage of their career they're in, but also gaining experience. I think as an athlete, you're funneled straight into your sport pretty much if you're lucky, and then when you come out the other side of it, you've not really tried anything else. You've not really got experience with anything else. So I think something like this offers people, one, experience, but two, a chance to see what they like, what they're good at, what they don't like. Not to mention, obviously, it's a brilliant cause for, you know, the children and inspire. And I remember being a kid and like you'd buzz off like at an assembly like this. You'd be like, oh, so and so's coming in and they've done this, that, and the other. Hopefully, you know, I can do that. Me coming in, I'd like to think so. Hopefully, they're not like, oh, boring, but
definitely not.
No, hopefully not. But yeah, so I just think it's great all round for both parties, both people involved, and it's just a nice something outside of what you're used to, just to give you a bit more experience and make you a bit more all rounded, I guess.
What kind of legacy would you like to leave in sport?
Well, I don't know. It's tough. I think obviously the cliche is you always try and leave it better than you found it, I guess, and I don't think I've had loads to do with that, but it naturally the sport is just progressing that way. I don't know, as much as when you leave the sport you want to be known for what you achieved on the pitch, I certainly would like that, but I think a big one for me is like when you talk about people you've played with and you go, oh, you know, they were a good person, or they really helped me through that, or there's loads of times where if someone says, oh, I'm signing for so-and-so, have you played with so-and-so before? The first thing I go to is the person they are. Oh, they really helped me through that injury, rather than they're this on the pitch, they're that on the pitch. I think that's, don't get me wrong, I'd love to, you know, be the next Messi and known as, do you know what I mean? I think that time's pretty much gone for that. But I'm one knee short of that and an ankle as well. But I think that's really what lasts, ultimately. Certainly to the people close to you. So I think, I'd like to just think people thought I was all right.
That's it. We're all people first.
She was all right. Yeah, I think that's good enough for me.
And then, do you have any specific goals for the future?
Like I say, a big one. I would love to win the championship again, just because I didn't get to celebrate it like I'd like to. I didn't get that on the pitch, hold the trophy up moment. So for that moment, but also to just be back in the WSL, depends when it would happen. I might then retire, I don't know. Depends how long this knee holds up. But again, just to get back to that, I think the reason I chose to maybe move down a little bit is because I wasn't enjoying football as much as I wanted to, especially after the injury. Mentally, I just needed to be back home and to be somewhere I can find the love for the sport again. And I think, again, when you choose to do that, when you make those decisions, you question, was it the right thing? So I think to just be able to win that and go back there, even if I don't play, who knows, depends when it happens or if it happens. But yeah, to just be able to say I've done that'd be a really nice thing to do, certainly in the short term sort of football career goals.
Definitely fingers crossed for you.
Thank you.
Finally, if you had a piece of advice for a young person, perhaps thinking of a career in sport or maybe football more specifically, what would it be?
I think what I've just touched on again, it's hard not to sound cliche, but you've got to have a love for it. I think my toughest times in the sport is when I've questioned if I do have that anymore. So I think ultimately follow what you enjoy and what you love, because it certainly in sport, and it might sound daft because people will probably think you kick football with your mates for a living, how can you not enjoy it? Which I do get. It's not like I'm out in the rain, and well, I am, but not doing hard labour or whatever. So I get that, but I just think you can't be successful really, or it's a lot harder to be successful at something if you don't love it, because it's so much harder to get yourself motivated to put that extra effort in. So you've got to love it. I think that might not be sport, whatever it is, but I think another bit, the other thing would be like certainly with sport, the mental side of it. I think you've got to take care mentally of yourself, and again I think that comes from maturing with injuries. I think you're never going to perform physically unless mentally you're happy. So I think always prioritise your happiness as well. I think in sport it's hard to lose sight of you as an individual. A lot of it's the team and I need to be doing this and that, but I think sometimes you need to step back and prioritise yourself. And I think happiness and love of the sport, I think if you stick with those two things, I don't think you can go too far wrong. But don't quote me on that.
We might have to.
Yeah, you might have to.
I think that was quite good.
Someone can run out, so there you go. I'll get it tattooed somewhere.
I think that was a really good note to end it on. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to doing some work with you.
Definitely. Can't wait to see you out there. And thank you to everyone joining us at home. We'll see you next time. Cheers.